In the world of college football, everybody remembers all the great teams like 2001 Miami, 95 Nebraska, 2019 LSU, and more. And of course, all those teams got one thing in common, and they are regarded as some of the best college football teams of all time. And as time goes on, we tend to forget about those teams that aren't on the pedestal of the greatest teams of all time, which is why I want to shine a light on the 2003 LSU Tigers. Now, not only is this one of the most forgotten teams of all time in college football, but this is also one of the most forgotten Nick Saban teams of all time in college football. Like many Nick Saban teams are, this LSU team was stacked with talent. The Tigers this season had 22 NFL players listed on their roster. You had guys like Andrew Whitworth, Donnie Jones, Kyle Williams, Joseph Adai, and Dwayne Bowe that went on to become all pros in the NFL or make the Pro Bowl. Then you had guys like Michael Clayton, LSU legend Corey Webster, and now ESPN analyst Marcus Spears also on this roster. And on top of that, you had Matt Monk at quarterback. Sitting behind Monk at quarterback, you had two NFL players in Jamarcus Russell and Matt Flynn, who didn't even play this season because they were true freshmen, so they redshirted. And as you can see, this team was crazy talented, and they showed on the field. The Tigers defense allowed just 11 points per game, and by the end of the season, only gave up 154 total points. This Tigers offense isn't the Tigers offense that we're more used to in today's college football, but it was still good, totaling 475 points for a whole season and averaging 33 points per game. As I said earlier, Nick Saban was the head coach of this LSU football team, and his offensive coordinator was Jimbo Fisher, who later on became a national championship head coach at Florida State and a not-so-fan favorite in College Station. And the defensive coordinator of this LSU team was Will Muschamp, who became a head coach at Florida and the head coach at South Carolina. He was also the co-defensive coordinator on that second back-to-back national title team for Georgia. And this team would quickly jump out to a 3-0 record, but it was against inferior opponents. The first game of the season was against Louisiana Monroe, and they beat them 49-7, and then their second game was against the Arizona Wildcats, where they beat them 59-13. The third game was against Western Illinois, and they could have did them worse, but they only beat them 35-7. And these three games set up a big matchup in week 4.
Defeated Georgia Bulldogs against the unbeaten LSU Tigers.
Their week 4 matchup was against the number 7th ranked Georgia Bulldogs. And this was a low-scoring game between two really good defenses. LSU led for most of this game, but Georgia ended up tying the game with a little under 5 minutes left, 10-10. But that was no problem for LSU, as they would respond with a touchdown with a little over a minute left and win the game. Their next game was against the Mississippi State Bulldogs, where they dog-walked them 41-6. The Tigers' next game was against the Florida Gators, where they was just coming off a loss to Ole Miss, and the LSU Tigers might have overlooked them. And I think it showed, as the LSU offense just didn't come out to play. They only scored 7 points, and Florida won 19-7. But I think it's safe to say, after this game, LSU didn't take any opponent lightly. They whooped South Carolina the next game 33-7. Auburn was next up on the list, as they were ranked number 17, but they lost 31-7. Louisiana Tech got done worse, as they lost 49-10. Then they rolled over the Tide 27-3. In the second to last game of the season, they played Ole Miss, where they was in kind of a dogfight, but they were able to pull it out 17-14. Arkansas will be the last victim of the regular season, as they beat them 55-24. And this will set up a rematch in the SEC championship game with LSU versus Georgia, the same matchup we just saw in week 4. On paper, it was the same matchup, but on the field, it was a much different story, as this time LSU whooped them 34-13. And this will set up a matchup between LSU and Oklahoma in the championship game. Leading up to this matchup, it was questions on whether Oklahoma deserved to be in this game. Some people believe USC deserved to be in it over Oklahoma, and this was the USC team coached by Pete Carroll and led by Reggie Bush, Lindale White, Matt Leinart, and Herschel Dennis. Now, USC and LSU both had one loss heading into championship weekend, and Oklahoma was undefeated. And it was believed that the computers loved Oklahoma, so even if they lost to Kansas State, they would still get in. And that happened, as Kansas State blasted Oklahoma, beat them 35-7, and Oklahoma still got in. But also, USC was ranked ahead of LSU in the BCS rankings, That was until a couple of teams lost. Boise State beat Hawaii and Syracuse beat Notre Dame, so LSU jumped 0.16 ahead of USC in the BCS rankings. In this game, LSU will lead for the entirety of it, and they would even have a 21-7 lead. Now Oklahoma will make it 21-14, and they will have 2 chances back-to-back to tie the game, but they would come up short on both drives. So this LSU team would end the season 13-1, with the only loss coming to Florida. And if my research serves me correct, there was still a ranking that had USC number 1. And on a blog post, I saw an LSU fan say that this team was the standard going forward for LSU teams. This was the first 13-win team in LSU history, and this was the first BCS national championship for LSU in the modern era. So this LSU team had a lot. It had a good offense, had a good defense, had some great players, and they went 13-1 and won an SEC championship and a BCS national championship. But I just wanted to mention this team because I don't feel like it get talked about enough. And until next time, I'm out. Peace.